This is Andrea Gregg, and you're listening to Death Talk Canada. Here at Death Talk, we're going to be discussing everything death. As a funeral director and embalmer, I'm surrounded by death every day. We will be discussing loss, grief, trauma, dying, palliative care, the MAID program, and the funeral industry. This is for anyone who's ever suffered loss, who lives with grief. My hope is to help you in some way by shining light on these difficult topics. Thank you for listening. For context, this is my first Death Talk Canada podcast. I decided to interview Angela because I knew Angela and her daughter Destinee. My daughter and Destinee went to elementary school together. And after Destinee's death, I saw how hurt and grief-stricken Angela was. And I saw on social media how often she wanted to speak about her daughter and tell her story and share her grief and not stop talking about her daughter. So when I thought about this podcast, she was the first person I reached out to, of course, because I know her and I knew her story. And I really want Death Talk Canada to be a safe place for families to talk about their loved ones who have passed away. I don't want there to be judgment about people's feelings and beliefs. I want to put it out there that everybody grieves differently and everybody does what they have to do to survive and keep going. And so with that, I hope you enjoy Death Talk Canada. Welcome to Death Talk Canada. This is Andrea Gregg. I'm here with my friend Angela Balcom, who tragically lost her daughter at just 15 years old, Destinee Donovan. When I originally began this podcast, you were, of course, Angela, the first person I thought of. And welcome here today, and thank you so much for sharing Destinee's story with us.
Thank you for having me.
And maybe to start, could you tell us a little bit of what Destinee was like growing up and what she was like as your daughter and some of her favorite things?
Okay, yes, so Destinee was like my angel, and she was kind, she was generous, she was funny, she had the best sense of humor, she loved dressing up, she loved being a princess.
I'll never forget when at school, when my daughter and Destinee were good friends when they were little, and Destinee was always the sweetest little girl. Her hair was always done to perfection with curls and sweet dresses, and that's just what I remember.
And she never fought me on any of it. She just let me be, and she was just like my live doll. Yeah. I was able to dress her up and do the curlers every night. And she let me do that until the age of 12. And then she was done with all that. Yeah. She didn't like pink anymore, and she didn't want curlers anymore. So, but she, if you met her, you just fell in love with her. And everybody was her best friend. She could meet you on the street, and she would come home and say, I have a new best friend. And she was always for the underdog. She was always for the underdog, where if somebody was sitting in a corner at school, she would go over and see if they were okay. And I've gotten so many stories over the years of more than what I actually knew was going on in her little life. And she was just a happy-go-lucky little girl. Perfect for me.
Absolutely. And as she got a little older, in her young teens, what was sort of maybe going on in her life then and leading up to her, tragic death, maybe explain what was sort of going on at that time for her.
Yeah, she had a little boyfriend at the time, and they were together for 2 years, and he and her were thinking about parting, and they did. And on the day that she passed away, she wrote a bunch of letters to him because she kind of changed her mind. She wanted to give them another chance, and she had everything prepared for when he came to pick up his clothes and stuff like that. And they were beautiful letters, but he was ready to leave her. So she was just very upset because he left before she was able to speak her mind. Like, she wanted to talk to him, not necessarily force him to get back together, but she is very much like me. When you have something to say, you want to say it. And he left the house without her having that closure, I guess is the proper word. And she kind of went to chase after him, and she left the house with nothing to do anything, any harm to herself that day. But from the house to the park, she somehow somebody gave her the string rope that was in the backpack to her. And she was trying to make a statement that maybe he'll come and talk to me now. And so she went to their spot at the park, and she took the string out of the bag and placed it in the area, so he would know where she was at, that she was in their spot.
Yeah, like kind of leaving like breadcrumbs.
Yes, exactly.
At the opening of this path.
Right.
And the string was a part of the backpack, correct?
Yes,
like
it was.
It was, yeah, like it was in the backpack that obviously somebody at some point gave back to her.
Right.
When she left the house.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so as she was waiting for him she wanted to get his attention, and being a teenager, you have actions that you shouldn't be doing or thinking about, and she was just wanting him to talk. That's it. So she decided to take that string to make a statement for when he walked in, and she put a rope around her neck and included a slip knot. And she chose a branch in the spot that was level to her nose, and it grew across. So her feet were flatly on the ground at all times when she decided just to put the rope around her neck, just for a shock value.
And it's your understanding, based on people that were in the park that day, that she fully anticipated somebody would come and find her.
Yes.
That the boyfriend might follow her and see the backpack at the opening and come and find her.
Right,
so she,
standing there.
Yes.
Like she wasn't going to do anything. I know that in my heart of hearts. Just the way it was set up. She had her feet on the ground. She thought she was in complete control at all times. And as people were walking by close to the wood area that she was in, she could see them through the cracks of the trees. And I knew that, and she just probably felt like, if I can see them, they can see me. And she just forgot she had the rope around her neck for a second and ducked under this low branch. And it caught her in the carotid artery immediately, and then it rendered her unconscious.
Oh, yes, and from what I've read, it's 2 to 3 seconds of pressure can render somebody unconscious.
Right.
So it can happen that quickly.
Right. And from what the police and the medical examiner and even the coroner that came that night to tell me that she passed away, and she says she did not suffer at all. And the way that I was told happened to her, I couldn't imagine it not. There being panic, that I figured she'd have to suffer at some point. And she said, I'm telling you right now, she did not suffer one bit. But I didn't understand it at the time until I actually talked to the medical examiner. I went to Halifax and talked to them, and the police that were protecting her that day until they could get her out of the woods, he was standing kind of guard to protect her. And he even said he's been on the force for 35 years. And there was no death struggle around her. He was there to study, to find out what happened. Mm-hmm. And there was literally no death struggle. And he said people cannot die that way without there being some sort of
like the hand,
panic, or
hands going up maybe around the ligature, and yes.
And he felt that, she did not unalive herself on purpose, that something else was going on. And he was the one that kind of told me about death by misadventure. Mm-hmm. And he said there's times that he has seen deaths and he knows that it wasn't intentional, but they have to label it that way. Yes. Because there is no in between. Yeah. And death by misadventure is what is in between.
That's right. So for people who don't understand DBM, or death by misadventure, what is the difference between that and somebody who intentionally unalives themselves?
What I can say is explain what death by misadventure is. And it's a death that is primarily attributed to an accident that occurred due to a risk that was taken voluntarily. Yeah. And it means that the victim has died by accident, either while doing something they should not be doing or by taking risks that would put them in mortal danger.
Right.
And the difference between the other one is they're committed to do what
ending
they
their
need
lives.
to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that Destinee thought she was going to die that day. Like, I really do not believe. I think she was just going to take the rope off her neck and come back home. She may have told me, and she may not have told me, but I do not believe that she intended to die that day.
Absolutely. And at 15, I think we can all look back and say that we were all, emotional wrecks and,
yes.
and relationships and friendships, and you're desperate to voice your emotions, and so it doesn't surprise me that at 15, high emotional state, that she thought that somebody was going to follow her in there.
Yeah.
and she would show just how desperate she was feeling.
Right.
But yes, not necessarily to think that I'm going to end my life.
No.
It's just that, to me, there is this gray area,
right,
where people sometimes do things irrationally or whatever, and in the moment, mm-hmm. and they don't realize the outcome.
Right. I can give you another example of
yes.
a 9-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
He had a hemp necklace similar to this. I got this just to his mom, or somebody bought him one. And he was in his room, and he didn't like how tight it was. So he wanted to stretch it out. And he put it, while it was on his neck, he put it over the bedpost. And he pulled back to stretch it out. And it killed this little boy.
Yeah.
But they had to label it as unaliving himself because he was by himself and the way that he died.
Exactly.
But we know that
He didn't
mean to, but they don't know how to label it because DBM is not very known in Canada. No. More of the UK and stuff like that is
they recognize
it there, and I just want to bring it here so we can fill in that gray area with something to say what happened to our loved ones.
That's right. And it's true, because for you as her mother, it does make a big difference, because I think she had every intention of coming home that evening back to you.
Yes. And
probably wanting to find out what was going to happen in this relationship that she was in. It doesn't seem like somebody like her in that moment meant to do that,
right?
To that extent.
Well, even when she left here that day, she didn't take her phone or anything like that. because I think she thought that she was just going back down this road to bring him back.
And she also, it's important to note that she never left an unaliving letter.
No,
Which
no.
not everybody does, but usually there is something. There is some sort of a plan.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
And I have her diary. As you know, she was planning to go to Jamaica. She had her whole apartment that she was going to get eventually.
Planned out,
Everything
yeah.
that she wanted in the apartment. She was going to rebuild a Chevy, 69 Chevy truck. Like she went on the internet and got part prices, and she was looking for a job, but she was only 15, so nobody was hiring at 15. But there was Tim Hortons that said, it's the day you turn 16, you don't even have to do your interview anymore. You come in and you've got a job. She had future plans.
Yeah.
And to speak of a letter, if you want to say, it was, I found a message in a bottle that she had tucked up under her dresser. And when I read it, what it was her feelings. She wanted to let go of her feelings if things didn't work out with her and her boyfriend. So she wrote down to release them to the ocean. She wrote a future letter, not an unaliving letter.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. So I do not feel that Destineé intended to die that day.
No, it doesn't sound like it at all. To me, and I do think it's a gray area that not a lot of people recognize, and I think that's great that you're bringing this to people's attention to explain what the difference is. Could you explain what happened, right when things happened, like when she went missing and how you were notified and ultimately...
Well, I knew there was something wrong 15 minutes after she left.
Yeah.
Just because I've noticed she didn't take her phone, so I had no way of getting a hold of her, and that's never happened in the 15 years that she has been with me. I've always known where she's at and had contact with her, and that's when I started to panic. And I had thought initially that she was going to her best friend's place, and so I texted her friend to say that Destineé was on her way over, and her and her boyfriend were breaking up. And it was probably about an hour later that her friend texted me and said, I'm sorry, Ange, but I'm not home. And that's when I knew something was drastically wrong, because if she didn't go to her friend's place, where is she? Mm-hmm. So that's when I went to her friend's place to talk to the mother, because I thought if Destineé just knocked on the door, then she might have said where she was going if her friend wasn't there. And when I went to her friend's house and the mother told me no, she hadn't seen Destineé, that's when the search started. And my first place I wanted to look was over at the park, because her and I spent so much time over at the pond over there. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe she's just over there crying,
Yeah, and this is a park that's very close to your house.
Just across the street, yeah.
And she frequented.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It was their place to go, everybody, that's where her and her friends would go. And when I started searching for her, I'm like, I know she can't be outside because the bugs were so bad. And I could not find her. And then that's when Joe decided to call the police. All I had in my head was you have to wait 24 hours, but that is not true. That is not true. And because they knew who Destineé was, they knew she was a good kid. So they all started looking immediately. And I sat on the stairs all night while everybody was out looking for her. Everybody looked over at the park. The police did. Her father did. Nobody knew of this area that she was found in. I didn't know about it. I didn't even know it was part of the park. But anyways, I was sitting on the stairs just oblivious to what is going on. And people would stop in and say they checked here, they checked there. So all night, that's what we had to go through, and no sign of Destineé.
So how long was she actually missing before?
23 hours.
23 hours.
And at the 24th hour, they actually were gathering up people to go on a search party, and they were going to start down at Miners Marsh is where they were starting. But in the meantime, my sister and brother-in-law actually found her.
Oh, God.
And that's how we got the news, and that's...
Wow.
Yes.
And when she was found, you know, she was... Her knees were sort of...
Yes, out, like, her knee, she was down and her feet were out to the side, like, they swayed out.
Yeah.
So she didn't have time to stand back
No.
up to take that pressure off her neck.
And can you explain what it was like when somebody told you that your beautiful daughter was gone?
I don't even really remember. People have told me, but I just remember at one point falling to my dad's feet and looking up at him and begging him to tell me it wasn't true, like that, just to tell me. And I remember looking up at him and he couldn't tell me. And
wow. Can you tell me about some of your hardest days?
yeah, there's been, and I think there's always going to be really, like, you don't really have happy or good days. Like, there's certain words in your vocabulary that kind of like get you in the heart, like happy birthday. I don't want to celebrate my birthday. My daughter's not here to celebrate hers. So it's really hard. Merry Christmases. Like, there's really nothing merry about my Christmas anymore. I love celebrating her birthday, though. And her celebration of life is the two celebrations that I make sure I do every year. But my dark days are still going to be coming because I don't have good days. I have worse days and bad days. That's how I measure. And her time before her death and time after her death, that's how you measure things in life. And there's been many a times that I have wanted just to be with my daughter. And my mother was the one that explained to me, because she could see it in my soul that I was planning on doing something. And she told me, I know that you have lost your baby girl, but if something happens to you, then I'm losing my baby girl.
Wow.
And I can't do that. And I said, exactly, wow, like, what do you say to that, right? Except for, I gotta be here. I gotta be here, because there are people that really love me.
Absolutely.
But they also understand how much I want to be with Destineé. That will never, ever go away. It will be a joyous celebration when I get to join my Destineé.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have faith that she's in a better place.
Absolutely. There's signs. There's signs. I'm writing a book. I gave birth to an angel, my Destineé, and just because there's just so much, she just flows with me all day. I know she has other things that she needs to be doing up there, but she is always beside me. Feathers, dimes, electronics, clouds, trees. I have so many proof of an afterlife.
And I should mention that when we were setting up this podcast, because we are at your house where you lived with Destineé, and I had some real technological problems that we blamed on Destineé, because I couldn't get this computer and the microphone to work. Yes, and of course I believe in that too, and your story always touched me, and not just because I knew Destineé, and my daughter, of course, was friends with Destineé, but you know, as a mother, and Destinee's your only child.
Yes.
And my daughter's my only child, and I've always thought, my God, like, a lot of parents have to go on for their other children.
Other children, exactly, yeah.
And I always thought, I'm just like Ange, I don't have another child.
Right.
You know, how does she do it?
Yeah.
And so for your mother made a good point about, you know, needing to be around for her because you're her daughter, and she didn't want to lose her daughter.
Right.
You know, that's pretty powerful.
And she has other children, you know,
Yes.
like, and I remember telling Destineé that she had to be extra careful in her life, because I really felt that when she was placed in my arms, when I gave birth to her, is that I have an angel in my arms. And then the thought went, well, she's not going to be able to be here for very long. And I don't know why I always had those thoughts. And I just thought, okay, well, maybe this is just normal thoughts of a mother. So I started talking to other mothers, and they were like, no, that's not what we think about or anything like that. I said, well, that, I don't know how to explain it, but I just hope that she outlives me. That's all I could hope for. I knew she wasn't going to have a long life, but I was hoping I was going to be gone before she was.
It was just this feeling you had.
I did, and her and I used to talk about it, and I used to say, like, you have to be really extra careful in your life. And she really was, because she was a very mature girl, but she made a very immature mistake.
And I'm sure she's not the only one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Who didn't necessarily intend to die that day, you know, but she made a rash decision and didn't realize
the danger
behind it. Yeah.
So I'll give you another example, and because I've been trying to think of how to. So let's say you cross on a crosswalk, like you turn the light on to show people that you're going to cross on the crosswalk, and somebody hits you and you pass away. That is an accident. But let's say you jaywalk and somebody hits you. I would say that would be a death by misadventure.
Okay.
Because they put themselves in that mortal danger, and it took their life. Because they took a chance. They took a chance.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would say there's probably a lot of drug overdoses.
Exactly.
You know, that weren't intentional.
Right. How do you decipher?
Unless somebody leaves
a note?
Yes, exactly. Right. So I think you bring up a really good point. You know, that it's not necessarily somebody's intention to unalive themselves. And what for you do you want people to remember and take away from Destinee's story?
To educate our children on the little seepy things that can come in and take their lives that we can't think of. And that's why I'm here, is because I need them to understand that there's more to this A to B. Like, there's all this in between. And we have to educate our children just to be aware of our surroundings more so than ever. Yeah. Because I didn't know to educate her on something like this. You know, and I wish I did. Yeah. Because she'd be here today.
You wouldn't, exactly. And most people wouldn't know to tell their children, you know, if you put something around your neck, it can take as little as 2 to 3 seconds.
Right.
For you to be unconscious, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. You can lose your footing, anything like that. And I have had a couple of people come to me and let me know that death by misadventure actually did save their lives, because they were hearing of Destinee's story and they might have been thinking of doing something, and they wouldn't even try it because
it made them think twice. Thank you so much for inviting me here, and I have to say that your whole house is dedicated to Destinee. Everywhere I look, there's purple, there's pink, her name, you know, all of her favorite things, you know, like Bob Marley and her fairies and angels, and just this whole place is a ode to Destinee. And can you explain a little bit about why you've done that and what that does for you?
Oh, it brings me comfort, because she's still around me. I'm surrounded with her. There's just, I can't describe it, but everywhere as I look, I just want to see her. I want to see her face. I want to see something about her. It does. I can't describe it any better than comfort.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I've always, you know, really been drawn to you and Destinee's stories, because I feel like that's how I would be too. I would want to talk about it. I wouldn't want to forget it. I wouldn't want to forget my child.
Right.
And I think so many people are afraid to talk. And as we said before, you know, people grieve differently, and maybe not everybody is comfortable to talk about it, but I think it's an important thing to talk about losing somebody and how we all grieve differently. And for you, I can understand why you want to be surrounded by your beautiful daughter all the time. And you don't want people to forget her, because
Right.
you're never going to, she's always going to be a part of you.
Right.
And that's never going to change.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah. No, it's I need her.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that I've lost friends because they don't understand my grief. But that's okay, because I've also made some really wonderful friends that do understand. And it's not that I need to talk about things. I just want to talk about her.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and the ones that I have in my life are there for a reason.
Yeah, like your children can never be your past. They're always going to be in your present.
Right.
Whether they're here
or not. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said before, time is measured weirdly. Like if you think of something that happened, I go back to, well, Des was gone at that time, or she was still alive. Like you measure your time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense
Yeah.
as to what I'm saying? It's your whole life is altered.
Yeah.
I will never be the Angie that I was before 2015. I'm a totally different person. I used to not be able to go out to a house without putting makeup and doing my hair. And since she's passed, I can't do it because I cry all the time. It doesn't stop after a time frame. Like I could cry 50 times in one day, and I might one day, but I cry every day for her. I long for her. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I forget her voice, and that scares me, or I can hear her giggle, and that just brings me so much joy. I can feel her touch me sometimes. Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, the goosebumps are incredible. I just don't want to be away from her.
You made a good point to me earlier when you said that one of your great fears is to ever have dementia and forget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because somebody said that to me. Well, you know, maybe it would be a good thing if you get dementia. Because I tell everybody, my mind is not good. It's really not. And they're like, well, maybe it might be a good thing if you get dementia. And I said, actually, I don't think so. Because I don't ever want to forget or stop talking about Destineé. And I think that would be really cool to get dementia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think the big takeaway, for me when we're talking about grief is that it never goes away. You just find reasons to continue on and honor her life and her memory, and certainly talk about DBM and, hopefully raise awareness and keep people safer. And if it means a parent talking to their children about, don't do anything in a rash moment when you're feeling extra emotional.
Right.
Like running out into a street or putting something around your neck, it could end permanently. Yeah. That's the takeaway.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you, Angela, for sharing Destinee's story with us, as well as your journey with grief.
Back.